Hey neighbors, the Handyman here with Initiative Coffee Company along with official Adventures League Care Bear Jake Del Maro. Today we're talking about DDEX-02-04 Mayhem at the Earthspur Mines. Writer Will Doyle, editors Claire Hoffman, Chris Tulach, and Travis Woodall. This is a 4-hour module set for Tier 2 play, tuned for 5 6th level characters. The module starts with gladiatorial bouts in the Black Blade and Bloody Boar Tavern. Mayhem at Earthspur Mines is full of combat with opportunities to use other pillars to avoid them. Part 1, the pit fight. From the start, the characters are searching for a stone dwarf named Boone Ludwighauser, who is currently unreachable until after a gladiatorial bout. The characters can opt to compete in the arena to gain some clout for the adventure. After fighting off against 3 skilled fighters known as the Fangs of the Chimera, the party encounters the Chimera of the Chimera with 2 lions. To assist in killing the beasts, Boone enters the arena as well. Jake, we're starting off with a bang. One thing I will say about Tier 2, or about Season 2 here, is a lot of the modules start kind of in the action, right? Like, there's not a ton of, like, building up to get people excited about the modules. I feel like in Season 1 there was a lot of, like, walking you through to the place where the combat starts.
Yeah, I'm not against it though. Like the first part of a lot of AL tables is like everyone getting their stuff put out.
That's true.
And it really pushes like for you to be Johnny on the spot about it. To be real about it. I love it. Not only did you just have to do a tongue twister to get through all that stuff, but there's a lot of cool features. Like this combat, it's not a pushover combat. It's not like you're fighting 6 goblins. It's tough. Like
even the first fight is tough.
The first fight is meant to mess you up. Like you got guys that have got like flame breath and all kinds of stuff because it's got like the dragon head. It's a cool thematic fight. I love it, and it is up there in some of my favorite combats out, like just in published material. Will Doyle, he's done an amazing. We've actually loved his mods. All of his he did the Great Investigation.
This thing
is a solid mod. With not only that, this pit fight, there's another portion, and it's really a lot of these later tier 2 these tier 2 adventures do lean into special assignments for factions. So if there was a Zent person at the table, you could potentially poison someone before all of this starts. There's a lot of cool parts of these adventures. Unfortunately, we have factions that got poo-pooed on because of the Red Wizards, but these are some like prime adventures that you'd run for a lot of tables, and to be really clear, there's a lot of players that have played through these and still love them because they just are unique, fun adventures.
I love this opening combat because there are aspects of it that are atypical of combats, right?
Yep.
When you kill things or when you crit, the crowd goes wild, you get inspiration, there's like exciting reasons to like steal kills from your like party members. Exciting reasons to be even more excited about a natural 20. These are huge, like, exciting additions to any combat, and I think it's nice to see it more than just like it's a pit battle, kill these people.
Well, the cool too, I think a part of it is in the battle tactics, it says they fight like a chimera, they fight like one, and it's like in addition to that, this is a very thematic fight with the chimera behind, right behind them, essentially, coming through. But it's a cool fight, a neat fight, and then you get to fight the real thing afterwards.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know. It's a fun fight, and I like there's a lot of side play that happens here. Then you get to the chimera fight itself. There's
a dozen things you can do before the fight. Even like there's a ton of stuff to like prep for the fight, investigate, get information. And then you fight a chimera, which is not super common in published materials. I think they're exciting.
No, there's not many. And I mean, it's like,
I can't come up with
it's kind of like manticores. Like when you have these like weird creations that are put onto the table, I love it. And it's not like it's like, oh, you fight a manticore and then you also find 3 giants. This was like the capstone. And it's nice because this is one of the first tier 2 mods that are for season 2. You had the Drowned Tower beforehand, where they fought a capstone Hydra. You have now another, D&D creature that's just like one of those
chimeras
creatures
are not just D&D creatures. Right?
Sure,
They're from
but
mythology, but they don't come up a lot.
They don't come up a lot, and like when people think of these of like D&D, they have the idea of like certain creatures, like capstone cool creatures.
Yeah.
This is one of those creatures, and I love it because it's not a pushover fight. It's a tough fight. There's lions that get involved that are just hit point soaks, and then after that you get an agreement with Boone, and he gives you some info. He wants to go out and meet his brother, and that's a big thing. So I do like the overall complexity that exists in part 1, and it's important if you're running this that you read all of that and you don't you need to know what's going on at your table, because even in this current AL environment with not many people that have factions, if you got a spy, you have a rogue, you have a ranger,
investigator,
something like that, or a criminal. Maybe give them that secret mission. I mean, they don't mean anything now.
Sure.
But give them that secret mission. It's a cool little thing to do. It adds another character to this overall thing. The Black Blade and Bloody Boar Tavern is a kind of a criminal hive mind. So the
other thing is
area.
We've talked about it. Just because factions don't play a direct impact in most characters doesn't mean that factions should be washed from the setting, right? Like, these factions presumably are still operating in some capacity, aside from AL admins' disregard for the benefits of these factions, right? So I think it's perfectly viable to have a Harper agent or a Zentarim agent in the arena area saying hey, we need to go deal with this person. We're putting you to work. Here's why you should do it. I mean, you need to have. It's not as easy as I'm your faction leader and I'm telling you to anymore. You have to have a selling point.
It's gotta be buy-in.
But I think it's not completely off mark to include those aspects. Anyway,
definitely agree.
Part 2, the North Road. Boone puts you on the task to make peace with his brother for him. He sends you off to the Falling Stone Mine. Before hitting the hard trail, the party spends the night in the Fire on the Threshold Inn. The trek to the mine goes through the mountains in cold weather, necessitating cold weather gear or constitution saves. Soon enough, the Ludwakazer dwarves arrive, receive Boone's letter, and escort the party to the dying King Iron Ludwakazer. King Iorn has been mortally wounded by Medusa that has taken over the Falling Stone Mines on behalf of the Cult of Black Earth. Iron asks the party to enter the mine, activate the wards, and eliminate the cult presence in the mine. There's a lot here. I mean, this is largely a role-playing area, right?
I mean, there is a Yeti fight here that is kind of cool because you just are crossing before we get there. You're absolutely right. This is a really cool spot. You get to find griffins. They're just hitting all the cool things right now. And
there's a cool tavern involved. I would say the tavern, if you need to cut something for time, you could probably cut out the tavern. I'll also say that this is listed as a 4-hour module, but realistically, the end of part 2 is
sessions.
Yeah, the end of part 2 is 4 hours, and there's the whole mine left, right? I would say this is probably a 6-hour module.
Yeah.
That just
there are parts you can definitely remove. Yeah. The first fight could be one of them, just so you just jump into the Chimera. That'll carve off 30 minutes. I mean, that's tough fights. That's 30 to 45 minutes you cut off right there. Maybe cinematically cut out the Yeti fights, make it more montagey. But either way,
with a skill challenge instead, right?
Exactly.
You can do a skill challenge to avoid the Yeti fight instead of doing direct combat. This is what we did to save time, and it worked out great. It
somebody tiny hutted.
Yeah, I mean, it still allowed players to roll dice. It still made dice rolls matter. And we cut out 35 minutes of a Yeti fight, and still got to experience that Yeti, right?
Yeah. I do think that if you're able to run this mod at its fullest degree, it is a punishing mod. You mentioned the trekking through the cold weather. That's not just a simple con save. If you fail the con save, you take 1d4 exhaustion levels.
That's right.
Very clear here. Yeah. But that is not all doom and gloom, because then when the clan shows up, they have a potion that will clear you of all of those levels of exhaustion.
Sure.
if the players go, oh no, just be like, just roll the dice. Are you gonna do anything about it now, or are you gonna keep trudging through? You are not in a safe spot.
Right.
Like, almost emphasize that. Like, make them feel like they either gotta waste resources or take the gamble of keep going forward.
Yeah. And ultimately, like, you're not safe here, and you've got exhaustion levels, or you can be unsafe on the road forward to help, and still have exhaustion levels. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I like this part. I think, like, honestly, part 2, the North Road, a lot of this is interesting, but if you're stressed to fit it in a 4-hour slot, this is where I would cut a lot of it, to be honest. The Inn,
hit
the
your
Griffins,
highlights.
They just don't necessarily, like, fit directly in with the rest of the narrative of the module, or frankly, the rest of the season. I think it's cool stuff, but maybe unnecessary stuff would be...
will mention though, the goal of this entire mod, this is something that comes up in season 2 that I've actively, I don't want to say I have an issue with, but I've seen kind of problems with, is that there's items that go between mods which are super cool, that like aren't always accounted for. Like, we're at the end of this mod, this sword plays an important role in 3 mods later, and there's an assumption that someone keeps this sword.
Right.
We'll get there at the end, but it's a story item. It's not a magic item. It's a story item that kind of it doesn't make any sense to keep. But we'll keep trudging along, and I'll complain about it later. But just if you are running a single game, just running a game with the same people, maybe start keeping track of these kind of ideas, because tier 2, they link together in very like odd ways. Like, plot E hits plot A, and you're like, you have no idea how they get in between until you're like, you're in the thick of it. So, like, just if you are running these mods in succession, just be aware of what's going on. And, you know, I don't want to say take notes on everything, but if you are planning on running this in a sequence, don't be surprised if you have to like be like, where did this come from? And you're like, oh. So that's just my little thing.
And unfortunately, there's no like wiki for AL, right? There's no like database of lore.
Well, there is.
There is, but
I've been there, but it's about as explanatory as good of an explanation as you know.
It's not specifically for AL. It's more for like Forgotten Realms in general. So there's not like a database to consult to help connect the dots. But ultimately, like, you
reach out to us.
Yeah, I mean, there's that, but also like you have the opportunity to make those connections on your own, however you feel like making them too.
Sure, I agree.
Yeah. Anyway, part 3, the Falling Stone Mine. Falling Stone Mine is laid out like a typical dungeon in the hardbooks. There are several rooms with substantial threats and alternate objectives, such as freeing captives. The party has the option of several entry points with plenty of opportunity to cause distractions. Many of the entryways have minigame-esque components that have additional rolling tables. The capstone is very challenging of an encounter with the Medusa and her retinue. There's lots of ways in. There's lots of things you can do. One of the minigames is like a kart race, like Donkey Kong.
Land sharks.
Land sharks are involved.
Land sharks destroying a tunnel. Don't do any other minigame. Make sure you push your people to land shark.
It's fun. It's
the coolest entrance into a mine is just a big tunnel of dust as everything behind you collapses. There's no other way. You can't convince me otherwise. There's no ooze elevators. It doesn't matter to me. Push them through the kart race.
For sure.
Do not skip this part.
Yeah, it's good. It's fun. I would maybe, if you were gonna do it free, like run it a couple of times, I would come up with some more consequences. It's based off a D6 roll. I might try to find a way to base it off a D8 or D10 roll. But other than that, like the kart race is fun. It's very like Super Nintendo nascent for
absolutely.
me. Like,
it's like
really
you're
hits
taking
all
a wide
those nostalgia buttons.
Yeah, you're taking a wide turn. You got advantage because you're leaning on the side, taking advantage shot. Like, it is super fun.
Jump to the other cart. Ready, go.
And start making up stuff. Yeah. Be like, I don't know. You see a banana in the track. You got to jump. I don't know. Yeah. It's fun. I love it. If you do not feel like you want to run that, just skip it.
Yeah.
It is a time-consuming one.
It is, yeah.
But like, when your players, if you're really building up and prepping it, this is one of those like this is one of those instances in AL in this kind of like structured writing that sticks with a player.
Sure.
There are a handful of them out there, but when somebody says, and I have many friends, when I have many players, many friends now that went through that. When you prepare something like that and give them this kind of like a nice packaged present, and it's this thing will make or break your like reputation. I hate saying it, but like it'll either make you like, this guy ran the most awesome adventure ever. I side shot a land shark in the face.
Or they'll be like, this DM dragged me through a grueling encounter with 2
exactly.
Yeah.
If it becomes a hit point thing, make like a piece of rock hit the land shark and finish it. Yeah. Like there's enough ways out of it, but this could be your like claim to fame is this spot right here. And I push it because I've heard it from a lot of my players, because I used to prep this. I used to highlight out of ad nauseum. One day I'll pull that stuff out, but I highlighted to the point where it's like, do this when this person does it, because I was playing with a consistent table. Yeah. So
that is the benefit of playing with a consistent table, is you get to know your players and kind of like get a feel for what they're interested in.
Exactly. So this is just a cool spot. I would cut other areas to make this one happen because of how much fun it is. Because when it's like, you go down another turn, and it's like, you do it again on your D8 roll or whatever, it's like it makes you think like, what kind of mine card?
Who built these mines?
These mines? They're not. This is not an efficient mine. So that's all I gotta say, and I'll say it probably again at the end of this. Yeah. But it is an important part. Then we go into the mine itself.
There's a lot of tough fights. This mod is full of combat.
The Medusa and the Nightmare, they run on their own.
Yeah.
If you're newer DMing on this, maybe like set them established somewhere not where they land, because you're fighting a lot of gargoyles, and they're just hit point tanks. They have like 4 attacks or 3 attacks. They have a couple of attacks.
Resistant to non-magical weapons.
Yeah, I mean, if whatever that is, that stinks if your party doesn't have it, but it will figure itself out, and people will need to adjust accordingly. And if they don't have magic weapons, pull some people off the board.
Yeah.
But like Medusas, it's a tough and weird encounter to do, because if a player doesn't tell me directly, at least how I run it, and I've been told I'm a Care Bear DM, I don't know by whom, but I kind of give them the benefit of the doubt. I ask, hey, are you looking at him or not? And they always go, oh, I'm not looking. But like, you need to establish that precedent like very early on. Once that hits the beginning, be like, hey, unless you say otherwise, I'm assuming you're looking straight in her eyes. You're looking into the depths. You're looking into the windows of her soul.
Right.
Like, you need, and it will either neuter her or it won't. But like, I don't want to accidentally, stone a character.
Yeah, I mean, and like that's a high stake at tier 2, right? Like becoming stone. It's
level
not
6
like dying.
Optimization.
Yeah.
But it feels like it.
It's not dying, it's worse, right? Because like there's no in older editions of AL, like there was faction aid, there was whatever.
You're just hoping you have a cleric that has got greater resto.
Greater restoration is the only way to go. Like that's the only solution. It's tough, and there's no like backup plan for it. There's 2 saves or you're stone.
Yeah.
So
you're stuck. Your character's just sitting there. Constitution
isn't a very common save, right?
Yeah.
Like not a lot of classes have it. So do be aware of that when you're going up. A Medusa plus a Nightmare plus some gargoyles is a tough fight, especially if the Medusa comes halfway through a fight that's already kind of costing resources.
And her goal, if she gets stuck, or if your party gets stuck in, let's say, the first room where there's where, let's say, I'm gonna assume that people did the coolest thing ever and did the cart track run. What happens is there's a flesh golem room. What the tactics of this Medusa are is to pick people off. So let's say your fighters are now into their room and she is right behind your wizard or your spellcaster. They do not have a con save. Like, that's just that. You just and how it almost played is like, you had the horse go like, and then she taps you on the shoulder.
It's a very
and it's like,
Scooby-Doo-esque
hey,
scenario.
I like it's it's payback for when people call me a Care Bear, and then I ask them if they are looking away or not. So I'll get either one save or I won't.
Do keep in mind if your players are looking away, it's disadvantage on attack rolls. So just make sure you're.
And it's I think that I always apply the blinded condition, which gives the other enemies advantage. Because they can't. Yeah. That to me is a fair trade-off. Because if you're neutering my ability, that is their. I'm gonna say it again. If you've been having fun at home and say the word capstone again, Medusa is one of those creatures again that I think is super awesome.
Yeah.
And if you're gonna take that ability from me, I'm going to take the ability to defend yourself away from you.
It's gonna be a tough fight. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, at this point in Tier 2, you could have also at AL tables level 10s that could be swinging with the plus 10 anyway, so it really doesn't matter.
Right.
It's just, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But if she crits someone, it's like 40 damage to the face. Yeah, like that hair stuff is acid right to the face. I think otherwise, there's really cool, beyond just the elements of the combat and what's going on, it's a very neat mine. There's guardians that were to protect against the elemental evils, who are super cool. They're just little like rock guys that just go beat stuff up. Mm-hmm. And then you can go to Groomish, if I believe that's what his name is. Please hold. But Groombar. My apologies. Groombar. There's a chamber to Groombar, who is the opposite of the evil. Elemental evil Ogremach. So like it's a very I will say this again from the Tier 2s, they add a lot of cool information.
Yeah.
You have both the good and bad elemental deities.
Mm-hmm.
I had a character that he whatever it was, he had an affinity towards the good, and he knew about Groombar beforehand, and this helped him later on. Mm-hmm. I think that's where I'm at it. I do like this adventure, at least with just even the information given. But
this might be my favorite adventure in Season 2. It's definitely on the top 5 list. There's just a lot here, right? Like the combats are meaningful, they're challenging, there's ample opportunity for the other pillars of play.
Brian, do you think the combat is appropriate for 5 level 6s? Or yeah.
No,
I would say no.
I would say it's probably overtuned for 5 level 6s.
If I think about when you take a long rest, first 2 fights, you're gonna take a long rest on your day travel to the next place. Then you have a Yeti fight that can mess you up real bad, but you can potentially. I mean, that alone is an issue, which I've seen the stuns and all that happen.
You could presumably get a second rest.
You get a short rest. I think you get a long and a short rest during that period. You're not going to be at full strength going into this, but I don't think this mod is built for you to just start decking people. Mm-hmm. Like, unless you got a barbarian fighter combo or something along those lines, this is a tough mod and, like, almost push discretion here. Something you should always, I should have mentioned this earlier, is this is a loud mine. Mm-hmm. So combat in one spot is not going to spark combat in another spot.
Yeah, I guess the other thing is one of the parts of the mission is to activate the wards, right? Which activate ancestral. They go roll
off and do
and so that can like handle a lot of like the ancillary combats and leave like the kind of capstone like flagship combats for the party itself. To get to them, you have at least probably one encounter with gargoyles.
One or two, and
maybe an encounter with the flesh golem. Like,
oh my goodness, do not, if you're DMing this, do not look at the map and see these split offs with one gargoyles. Do not fight them. That is a stupid waste of your time.
A single gargoyle isn't going to be much of a challenge. It's a
resource
waste a lot of time. Your players are going to spend resources, but not valuable ones, right? Like they're going to use cantrips, they're going to do that kind of thing.
No, they will or something. They will waste something. Their own time.
Yeah, I mean,
like they're like out of game time. Do not do that stuff. Mm-hmm. Be like,
this is already a big module. Yeah,
like the mine itself, as you said, is a 3 to 4 hour mod by itself if you are like running it true to form.
Yeah, I think there's 9 rooms in the mine?
10.
10? Yeah, there's a lot to get through. And obviously, like, you don't have to get through all of it. I mean, that's the benefit of these, like, dungeon layouts and modules is, like, they provide you extra content, right? It's not expected that you go through it room by room. But, like, there's a lot here that could come up, right? So, I think packs of gargoyles are much more useful from a DM standpoint in terms of engaging your players as well as like your time management than like re-rolling initiative for single gargoyles every 10 to 20 minutes. It just doesn't make sense.
Not even every 6 minutes. Like when you're done, it's just like I do think that all in all on this part before we get to the the next section is compared to other mods, this is a on point mod. I don't remember the last mod with the crushing the earth cult, but one that stands out to me is the one in the bog where it's like they gave a lot of info
with the intellect devourer.
Like there's probably one or two in between, but like those 2 mods stand out to me, you know, years after running them ad nauseum, like as cool info dump mods that are just like, this is neat. And
it does task DMs with the responsibility of presenting that info in a meaningful way, though, right?
That's why they're here. That's why you guys are here.
Yeah, I mean, rather than just being like, here's the list of bullet points from this module, you know, it can be challenging to find ways to like make that information digestible.
Yeah.
But I think all of the information is valuable, especially when like the goal of the organization is to build this cohesive narrative world that all of these adventures are taking place in, even 7 years later, right?
Sure.
It is, I would say, one of the first major up steps in challenge for encounters.
Oh, absolutely. This is, I think we spoke about, what was it? There was a couple mods ago. It was like, it was a consistent 6.
Yeah.
Like this was like a. It definitely pushes to do like. There could be a tough encounter room 1 if you if you roll poor or you don't want to fudge your stuff and you want to make it as true as possible. You could have a really rough entrance to that mine, like right after a land shark fight. I'm not even gonna try to say boo. I feel like everyone's gonna yell at me if I don't, or if I say it wrong. So I'm just gonna say land shark. And realistically, if the mod could end right there,
it could
like you once you have a nightmare and you have the main person gone, like you have just minor challenges ahead of you, and at that point there's like it's a war of attrition versus like there's kill factors.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I would say the mine probably should end once you kill the Medusa.
Oh, yeah,
and,
like,
the gargoyles
absolutely.
just kind of, like, leave if there's any left or are dealt with by the Guardians.
Sure.
The mod, however, continues in Part 4, The Return. After clearing out the mine, the party returns to King Yorn and finds out the story between the brothers Ludwig Khazar. He asks the party to take his sword to his brother before dramatically dying. If the party eliminated gargoyles in the mine, griffins from the Fire on the Threshold Inn arrive and are willing to serve as mounts to get the party back to Molemaster. Upon their return, the party finds a doppelganger disguised as Boone, ready to receive the sword. This is like a last minute dig at your party members, right? Like,
well, they mention there's like 2 different ways you can have certain events happen before things occur. It's escaping me at the moment, but like you could have fights happen at later times, something like this. This is important to that last, like being thorough with your search and like not necessarily saying, I know like when the mine's done, like if the Medusa's dead, I agree, but you should let the party explore.
Sure.
Because for instance, the whole Shrine of Groombar, if they fix the shrine because it was consecrated, they get an instance about it, and it explains this entire scene. And I'll be honest, running this a few times, there are people that just like, you read this 3 minutes ago, and like, gone. It's in one ear, out the other. And either they're gonna succeed in this part of the mission, which, once again, this comes back to the whole who's got this weapon mod, You know, 4 missions later, or I guess it'd be 2 or 3 tier 2s later. But this is an important part that's not addressed in later mods, and I don't know quite why, but like, it's a cool thing because it really checks if your party's checked in still. It's a weird trolly thing by Will, and I love it because like if somebody's not paying attention, they can just give up the sword to some doppelganger who's the secondary to the person that owns the Black Boar's Inn. Like, you call BS or you don't, and that's really it.
Yeah. Other than that, I would say keep in mind it's probably 6 hours of content. So if you have 6 hours,
run this mod.
Congratulations. Otherwise, split it into 2 sessions.
Yeah.
If you do split it up, I think you can get through all of it instead of just having to like squeeze it in.
Sure.
If you're stuck to 4 hours, you can probably cut out most of part 2. Maybe cut out the first
combat,
before the Chimera.
Change where the Medusa is.
Yeah.
Finish it when the Medusa's done.
Yeah.
Let her
find ways to streamline that.
Yeah.
Other than that, there it is. DDEX-02-04 Mayhem at the Earthspur Mines. Thank you so much for listening to some advice to streamline it and run out your tables. Be a good neighbor, give us a thumbs up and subscribe. Find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Patreon, and MySpace. And from now until the next time, roll together.